Hey guys, Just Another Gamer here. It's time for another Just Another Gaming review. Today's game, Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance. Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance was actually developed by two different studios, Kojima Productions, Platinum Games. Platinum Games has a great pedigree on really high crazy games such as Vanquish, Mad World, and Bayonetta. And most recently, Anarchy Reigns. And without Platinum Games, this game would have never seen the light of day. Originally, it was scrapped due to the fact that the original team didn't live up to Kojima's expectations, and with the help of Platinum Games, they were actually able to develop this game. While they worked on the gameplay, Kojima Productions worked on the actual story and direction of the game.
And vending machines full of blood.
Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance takes place 4 years after Metal Gear Solid 4. And you pretty much can take control of Raiden right now, who is now working with a PMC group called Maverick to support his family. On one mission, he is tasked to actually protect this Prime Minister of a fictional African war-torn country. And that convoy gets pretty much attacked. The Prime Minister gets kidnapped, Raiden goes after him, and Raiden gets utterly defeated and injured in the process, and the Prime Minister is actually killed.
All we're saying, give war a chance!
A few weeks later, Raiden comes back with a heavily cyborg body, and to take his revenge on Desperado. Throughout the story, he uncovers a plot about child soldiers extracting their brains to train them into actual soldiers. I know, weird, huh? It actually touches a lot on Raiden's past as a child soldier, where it still affects him to this day, and how the Jacket Ripper persona will actually play an actual big role in the game, and how Raiden will have to overcome it to face his inner demons. The Solid series. Otacon is always referenced, and even Sunny makes an appearance in the game itself in the later stages to actually help Raiden on his mission, and later becomes actually a codec conversation.
Hi there, stranger.
Hey, you're looking good.
Aw, who's your little friend?
It's a long story.
With the game being on the bit short side, 5 to 6 hours long, the characters you try to get to know aren't really fleshed out as much, especially the bosses to the actual characters that Raiden befriends throughout the whole game. And the tension the game tried to build, it's lost pretty much, thanks to being its short length and not being able to flesh the characters out a bit more. And especially Sam, who is one of your biggest rivals throughout the whole entire game. His character doesn't really get much of a backstory, but with DLC coming out of the way, apparently featuring him as a main character, who knows? We might get to see his backstory even fleshed out even more. The game could be easily classified as a hack and slash with a bit of beat 'em up elements and some stealth elements into the game. Where the stealth comes in is more you walk behind them and pretty much stab them in the back for an instant kill. beam up elements pretty much come from the light and hard buttons where you can string together combos, and you can also block and parry your opponents. By actually flicking the movement stick towards the enemy you're trying to parry or block, and Raiden, depending on your timing, will either block or parry that opponent, and that all depends on your timing. And sometimes parry or block don't actually work when you're like getting grabbed, or some special boss moves actually prevents parrying or blocking. The game's actually very linear, so you're only tasked to get to point A to point B as fast or as slow as you can, with little room for exploring. And though the only parts for exploring is you could pick up like extra VR missions to play, and extra health or special items to help you later on in the game. The AI in this game is actually very good. They'll actually figure out new tactics to actually try to avoid your sword, to actually gang up on you with heavy characters and shooting you from afar. And this is all just to help you to master the controls. The blocking, the blade mode. Once you master this, the game is actually very easy, but if you don't, the last boss is going to be a bitch to kill, because it requires precise blocking and precise use of the blade mode. Many games actually say it's actual sword combat. It's more like you do this for the whole actual time, compared to actually Rising is actually the first game that actually allows you to slice your opponent any way you want. This system, dubbed Blade Mode, slows down time, allowing you to precisely actually cut your opponent any way you want, which is pretty cool in my sense. Rising, you could cut almost everything in the game, except for a few parts of the game, like such as the actual part of the levels itself, where you can't cut certain walls or glass, boxes, and cats. Apparently, Raiden's worst enemies are cats. Blade Mode allows Raiden to slow down time to cut his enemies any way he can. So, it allows him to pretty much systematically slice his opponents or his boss's equipment off. It's actually very essential to actually be in the game. So without mastery of it, more or less, you can't beat the game at all. The bosses require you to actually precisely cut off part of their equipment, shields, or certain parts of them to actually progress through the many phases of the game. Well, during Blade Mode, when you're fighting regular enemies, you could actually use it and slice them up to grab their spines out of their body and crush them in your hands. It helps you replenish your HP, and it's just awesome to freaking watch. But it also makes the game a bit too easy, as there's a abundance of a lot of enemies where you can just like slice them up and just constantly just keep grabbing and replenishing your HP. You could be a bit careless, but you can't be so careless to a point you can actually get killed. So, but this actual system makes the game actually a lot more simpler than it actually is. There's a move called the Zendatsu move where you could pretty much use with Blade Mode. It's not a Blade Mode move. It's more of a move where you're prompt to press a button on an enemy that's dizzy to actually enemies who's about to die, and you pretty much slice them up the way you do in Blade mode, but you get extra points in a styling Zendatsu thing at the side of the screen. So it's pretty much you get extra points for it at the end of the stage to use to purchase upgrades for your weapons, or new skins, or even new weapons or new skills. Metal Gear Rising actually features a lot of quick time events, but usually this always happens during boss fights, and everybody should know what a quick time event is, where you either move the joystick around really quickly or pressing a button really quickly as fast as you can. This usually happens during boss fights, accompanied by a big, huge, awesome cinematic, and trust me, this is one of the few times that I actually like quick time events, because it's actually just crazy to watch what Raiden does after you successfully just press the quick time event as fast as you can. Well, speaking of boss fights, Metal Gear Rising has some of the best boss fights in the game. So, the bosses are fucking badass, encompassing many phases, and some even towering Metal Gears. It's just amazing to see, and they even taunt you throughout the entire game, entire boss fights, just to get you all ruffled up, make you do some mistakes and whatever, and they just speak to you on the views of war. It's just amazing to see. It's just amazing to play as well. And each boss requires a different tactic to play, so if one tactic worked the first phase, second phase, it will not work at all. So you have to figure out their own weakness and just try to always wait for an opening instead of just rushing in and attack. Well, my favorite boss fight in Metal Gear Rising Revengeance has to be with your rival Sam. And it feels like two cybernetic ninjas, like samurais, just drawing their swords, fighting a duel to their death. It just feels so awesome. It's just an awesome boss fight in general.
And it ends here. Okay. Let's dance!
If there's something I can say about Metal Gear Rising Revengeance in terms of graphics, it's just fucking looks amazing. The game itself has great graphics, especially when you're slicing your enemies into a million pieces. You can literally see the individual slices you're technically making, and it's just awesome with all the bloodshed, even that little cinematic where you're grabbing out their spines, crushing them in your hands. It just looks so nice. Cinematics itself, amazing. It gives the feel that full tension and fighting. It's just so nice to see. There's one thing I could praise Metal Gear Rising for, is its soundtrack. It's just full of heavy rock to metal kind of music. Just, it fits with the game so well. by what I mean, it's more, it fits to actually, when you're facing bosses, the soundtrack for the bosses is just amazing. It gets you pumped to actually want to finishing the game. And it fits the situation when you're hacking and slashing away enemies. This right song actually plays at the right time. It's just awesome to listen to. Best of all, some copies of Metal Gear Rising actually comes with the soundtrack, which is a great plus with me. And I got myself the limited edition, so I got myself with the soundtrack as it is. I'm not sure regular copies come with it, but who knows? It could come with it, and that's a great deal of bargain.
With us now, something warm and pure. Find the peace within ourselves. No need for a cure. When the wind is slow and the fire's hot, approach our waves to see what rots. Oh, I'm ready. On the scenery, this is nature's sacrifice.
There's one thing that disappointed me about Metal Gear Rising Revengeance is its level design. It's really bland, uninspired, nothing really stands out in a sense. So it's empty. It just feels empty. It's the same with, like, I picture in the big city level Denver where you later go in the game. Yeah, I picture like civilians running for their lives, or civilians hiding behind garbage cans or trees or something like that. But nope. We just get an empty city with a few cyborg cops, a few geckos, and Raiden. That's all we get. And some parked cars around. But it feels so empty. That's one thing I don't give the studio top marks for. Level design. The only standout level that I could actually think of is the Dual Sam, which actually fits in very well with the boss fight. It's like, it feels like you're a cowboy, or in this case, cyborg ninjas or samurais. Like you're doing a standoff to the death. It matches perfectly with the actual boss fight. There's something about boss stages are actually just as good as well, but at the same time, it also feels a bit bland and uninspired. So sadly, the stages aren't really as good or high quality as the rest of the game, sadly. Final verdict for Metal Gear Rising Revengeance is a 7 out of 10. It's a good game, don't get me wrong, but there's a few things that are actually holding it back from achieving 8, 9, or even a 10. Stuff like 5 to 6 hours is not enough time to dish out this many characters, and not having more backstory, more making you how to feel more sorry for them if they die, or make them more likable in a sense. And then you got the camera control, which I'm always fighting against. I wish they actually fixed up the camera control a bit more in terms of tight quarters, and the bland environments really doesn't help. Just like the city level I said earlier, I wish there were more people around, like civilians around, so you have to watch where you hit and just target on the enemies at hand, not the civilians hiding and screaming for their lives. Lastly, usually, is the blocking parry system. I wish it was actually mapped to one button, not the attack button. Because there are times I actually do attack, which I'm meant to block, and it really screws you over in the long run. But the game is actually very good for its gameplay, blade mode. It's just the satisfaction when you rip out spines, and the music is awesome, boss fights are amazing. Sure, it doesn't have the complexity of freaking Solid in terms of storyline, but who cares? This is Rising, not Solid. It's all about being a cyber ninja slicing your way through enemies. That's it. And now, if you excuse me, I got some watermelons to cut right now. So this is Just Another Gamer Review. I'm Just Another Gamer, just like you.